Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast. Absolute honor that you have joined the number one industrial-related podcast in the universe. I have nothing to back it up, but I'm going to plant a stake. It is the number one in the universe that is dedicated to you, the industrial professionals, the companies that get it done. You're bold, you're brave, you dare greatly, you innovate. Boy, do you innovate, and we thank you here on this particular platform. And this is the Saturday live edition. So we're testing out some stuff, and we've got a great interview with a gentleman by the name of Karl Hoffower. The doctor is in the house, and we're going to be talking a little bit about comprehensive reliability strategies for people, processes, and assets, and how it applies to, one, retaining talent, managing risk, saving money, making money, creating an absolute resilient business going forward, because we don't know when the next two-finger death punch is going to hit us in the forehead, and we're going to have to figure out how to be able to sort of manage that type of situation. Now, over the past month, 2 months, whatever, I've been sort of just sharing, once again, sharing the information that has been provided by manufacturing leaders, industrial leaders, leaders like Dr. Karl, and they all revolve around the ability to be able to retain, manage, save money, make money, retain, but in the world of collaboration, innovation, not just innovation from technology, innovation all the way across the business, part of your, the human element within your business. Education, huge. Look at my eyes in this particular, they're huge. And speed in a sense of moving forward, right? You got to move forward, make mistakes, stub that toe, shake it off, get back up, continue to move forward. You know why we need that? It's because we depend on you. You are heroes in this particular platform. You are the ones that keep this economy moving. You're the ones that are going to continue to help us prosper in the future. That's the bottom line. Oh, it's heavy possibly to carry that particular sack, but once again, you're that important. Now, when we start looking at business, when we start looking at sort of the elements of business, we can get real granular, but I've taken it and sort of distilled it down, applying these principles into one, operations. What are you doing when it comes to managing risk, saving money, making money, resiliency? Operations, leadership, right? We've got to learn and grow and train and do whatever is necessary for leadership. We got to up our sales and marketing and branding game. We have to. You have to. That's important, right? We also need technology, not just the standard tech that we have out there, which is fantastic. No slam on it. There is a huge push for emerging tech and how do I apply it in my business? How does that create resiliency? How do I prosper with that? All important. And then finally, finance. We've got to understand what is available out there, right? We got to understand what's available out there in the world of finance to be able to, survive, because that's where we're at. We want to be able to survive, rebuild, prosper. That's where we're at. Now, with that in mind, we've got, once again, Karl Hoffower. He is definitely the executive director of Failure Prevention Associates. It's a long name, but it means a lot. And he's going to be joining us in fact, right now. Karl, how you doing?
All right.
How about that?
That's fantastic. Thank you, Scott.
The doctor's in the house.
The doctor's in, yes. So let's get started.
Yeah, let's give us a little background on who you are there, doctor.
Sure. So Dr. Karl Hoffower, I founded Failure Prevention Associates in 2007. Prior to that, I was the chief of phys med and rehab for a medical group in Silicon Valley. And so I had various things I did on physical medicine, which was neck pain, back pain, things like that. But essentially doing diagnostic tests to render an opinion about the health of humans. And then I switched over. I had trained actually to be an electrician when I was in high school. So I started looking for something to do and found this niche industry of condition monitoring. Some people call it predictive maintenance. Some people just call it condition-based maintenance. But basically, you're using diagnostic tests to render an opinion on the health of assets instead of people. So vibration, thermal imaging, motor circuit testing, oil analysis, things like that, to give you a general understanding of how healthy the equipment is. Fast forward to now, 20. Yeah, yes.
Just to try the link, it's not a. Although you were looking at humans, you were doing the same sort of similar diagnostic and applying those tools, techniques, and strategies associated with making that asset, the human body, right,
correct,
perform at its peak, and then modify and provide some maintenance if necessary. You just translated that over into the industrial space, which is pretty
absolutely
damn cool. Yeah, I like
so
that.
The first couple of years was a lot of learning, going out into plants and just finding out what the other equipment that they're monitoring is, whether it's ball mills, whether it's hammer mills, whether it's ID fans versus forced draft fans, right? Learning all of that and just basically selling tools to help people. Then people started saying, hey, I bought this, whatever, thermal imaging camera, vibration analyzer. What do the little squiggly lines mean? What does it mean when this is a situation or not? And so went through certification training myself and all the technologies, and then started providing training to people to let them understand this is the significance of this finding versus this finding, and then started going into the field and actually doing vibration analysis, helping to solve problems. And the thing that I found interesting was being trained as a doctor, you're trained in what is called differential diagnosis, which means patient presents with chest pain. Well, there's 30 something things that could be. The worst would be a heart attack, right?
Yeah.
It could also be they decided to do push-ups with their kid because they want to get fit, and now they've got a muscle strain here, right?
Yeah.
So sliding scales of where something is important or not. So there's a logical criteria that we use, and that has served me very well. It's also been helpful to understand physics, understand chemistry. So that has helped me propel to solve problems and help others to look at solving problems. And most of the time, the clients or the people in the factory or the plant or on the shop floor, they know what's going on. They just need someone there who, I'm going to quote Congressman Dan Crenshaw, the ex-Navy SEAL with the eye patch.
Yeah, you're just a little name dropper.
Well, I'm a big fan. And he's also a Texan. But Dan Crenshaw talks about in his book, Fortitude, calm breeds calm and panic breeds panic. So some of the best thing you can do in a tense, stressful situation when millions of dollars are on the line is to just remain calm and try to look at things from a logical perspective. Easy to say, not easy to do. And so I've certainly been in my share of tough situations in the industrial sense where you're making a decision that is going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so people get a little nervous about that. So having trust in a process to evaluate how the data is coming back so you can make an assessment is important. So
what's fascinating about what you said, outside of the fact that I wrote down calm breeds calm, panic breeds panic, which is a absolutely fantastic statement during these COVID times. Fantastic. But it's in the world of condition-based monitoring, in the world of whatever maintenance, you never stop learning. You never, and that's where I would imagine your feeling of sort of that feeling of uncomfortable, that thing in your, because you never stop learning. Things reveal themselves as we continue to learn more about your craft, and that is this something that I got to pay attention? Is it something new? I've never seen that before. What is that? And you always have to address those challenges.
Yeah, well, and just going, I've never seen that before. One of the things, when I teach the class, so I teach some vibration analysis classes, but I teach this in every single class. Learn what normal is or should be. So at the very least, you're competent, which competency is the minimum basic knowledge on a topic. So you're competent enough to go, that's not normal. I don't know what that is.
That's interesting.
That's not normal, right? So there's times where you'll walk around and you'll look at some equipment. And you go, well, why is that? People, when they're in the thick of it and they're in the plant or they're in the shop or at the mill, they're used to certain things and they get ignored. In fact, funny enough, a good example of just ignoring something simple is my children have a fish. They have a beta or a betta, whatever you're going to call it. And we found in research.
A fish?
Yeah, the Chinese fighting fish, right? Yeah, those colored fish, right? So come to find out, they do better in warm water, in tropical water. So we bought a little heater. And when the heater's running, there's condensation along the top edge of the tank. There's always like little rain droplets on the top edge of the tank. And one day I noticed that there weren't, and I just ignored it. Well, that was a sign that the heater had failed. And if I had recognized that, like, that's not normal, it should be condensating because it should be warm enough that the water is evaporating off the surface because the differential in heats with the 72 degrees in my house and the water temperature there. And I just went, wow, here I preach this all the time. And yet here's another valuable lesson that I noticed something. There was a parameter and then I swiped it away and just ignored it. But we're also seeing that the fish was not doing well.
Did the fish die?
No. Lapis is doing well. So
Lapis.
So he's bluish. So
it is what it is. What the heck?
Listen, sometimes when your kids are young and you let them name it, right? You say like, "What are we going to call the fish?" And they go, "Fishy." Again, okay, that's the fish's name, right? So, but yeah, Lapis is his name.
Let's stretch it a little bit, Lapis. I like it. Okay, now let's venture in. You've got Mad Street cred, no doubt about it. Go out to Industrial Talk. You can go to Industrial Talk because that's where this will be. But you can also go out to his LinkedIn profile, Mad Skills, major stuff. You're active out there on LinkedIn?
Yes, sir. Yep.
There you go. Reach out in that sense. Now let's take that and let's, in light of the feedback that I've been receiving from many manufacturing industry and so on about what they're really focused in, and specifically within the COVID world that we live in, because pre-COVID, I think we had some level of laziness, and there was some things that we were doing that, quite frankly, could be BS. And did we really take the world of reliability seriously, or it was always the people don't really like it, or it is like it. I see there's a renaissance that's taking place within reliability, and for these reasons. And you're going to explain a little bit about that if you don't mind.
If I agree with your reasons.
It's all about you. It's not about me, baby. I'm not going to speak on this.
I just love how you're like, I've come up with these reasons and you're going to explain it. All right, let's roll.
Yeah, you are. These reasons are like, hey, does it manage risk? How does it manage risk?
Oh, right. Okay, good. So, So if you define reliability, it's that the asset performs when you need it to produce what you need, right? That's a very basic definition of reliability. And so managing risk is that when you have multiple assets and multiple systems, then suddenly the ability of you to produce the product in the time and quantity needed with the quality needed become an issue because you've got lots of different moving parts besides having people in there. One of the things that we've noticed on the ability to manage risk is maintenance should be there to proactively maintain this high level of operation.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's been a shift over the last few decades that maintenance is just a necessary evil and fix it fast when it breaks. Yet study after study after study and plenty of other results from communities or companies that take a proactive measure towards this find that when they're fixing small problems in a short duration, they get better throughput. But you still have people that come in and say, yeah, but it's so expensive. I'm going to interrupt real quick.
When you say small problem, is that sort of an incremental approach to managing risk? Let's say I have this elephant. The elephant is risk, whatever that is. If I take an incremental approach and say, okay, I'm going to tackle that, great value here, great value there, and be able to create great victories, am I managing that risk? Is that what you're saying?
So when you're trying to manage risk, the problem usually comes down to who are the people that are deciding if you're doing a good job or not, right? Senior leadership. And what senior leadership wants is return on investment.
Yeah.
And they want it fast. So it depends on the cycle that you're dealing with. You have some companies that are willing to go 1 to 3 years. Those companies, when they stay the course, have tremendous gains that are lasting. Then you have other companies that they're on a shorter cycle. And unfortunately, oftentimes it becomes on how are they compensated? Are they compensated on a quarter-to-quarter basis? Right. So we can talk about this lofty goal. In fact, I was on the phone yesterday with a midstream gas processing manager, and he got transferred over to a place that he thought was going to be run really well. And he walked in. There were quite a number of safety shutdown devices that had never been actually hooked up.
No way.
And so, they hadn't been hooked up.
What happened is you buy the safety devices, right? You buy them. Somebody had to procure them. First off, somebody had a plan for it, procure it, right? And then what? They just sit there and nobody finally just sort of executed on what happened? No,
they didn't commission. They didn't pay for commissioning because they had to get the plant, because they were behind on their construction. Right. They had to get the plant producing whatever it's supposed to produce. In this case, it was natural gas process. And so they just said, let's just run it. And so what they did then is they rewired stuff so that there wouldn't be trips. So he went through and did a short audit and went, we have to shut the plant down. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We're shutting this plant down. Woo. And management above him said, there's no way we're shutting this down. He said, okay, well, I'm giving you a list. This is the list that's been known about for a long time. And per our policies, we're not supposed to operate on this. By the way, this is a process safety managed facility, which means federal regulation coming into play, and we need to shut it down. Now, nobody wants to do that, right? You don't want to stop all production. But what you had was a culture at that place, at that location, that didn't understand the ramifications. They're just fortunate that they never had a major incident. What we have here in Texas, if you look back at 2019, we had several major incidents where there were explosions and fires that lasted days, many, many days. There are two in particular, one in Beaumont and one in on the Houston ship channel that lasted over a week. The one in Beaumont was burning materials that were so toxic, people were fleeing out because they didn't want to be around the fumes from there, right? Those things were preventable. And so you have a responsibility when you're managing risk. One of the biggest risks you want to be understanding and manage is the risk to humans, the risk to environment. And when you say humans, I'm not just talking about inside your fence with your plant workers, who are very important, but also the community at large, right? We live in this wonderful, great country called America, and you have a responsibility as an American to not allow your process to get out of control and pollute and potentially harm both people and birds and fish and other things like that. And it's just basic responsibility, right? We're not being a tree hugger here where we're trying to stop industrial work. That's not the point. The point is that you're managing risk for several reasons. First, foremost is human capital. Second would be environment. And then third should be your profit. And you do want to make a profit, right? We're all in a profit-making enterprise.
You got to have, absolutely. That's not negative.
Right.
That's not a negative thing.
See, when it comes to managing risk, I bring that up because so often managing risk, people are looking at managing risk for their bottom line instead of looking at the bigger picture there. Unfortunately, the rules of today are for that person you fired yesterday, right? So managing risk has to do with we created rules. Well, did you create rules that are helping you drive your business, or did you create a rule in a knee-jerk reaction because you just wanted to do something? And I'm not opposed to that. There's sometimes where you need to put down a harsh, fast rule just to get things stabilized. But you should look back at it and decide, hey, is this really a good rule or not? So when it comes to managing risk, one of the things you need to look at it then is do we have a process that captures consistently feedback from the frontline workers, from the operations people and the maintenance people out in the field to better understand what's going on in your plant?
Yeah.
And often at many clients, you talk to the people down on the shop floor or in the plant, and they have fantastic ideas on how to do things better. But there's not a consistent process to roll that up the line to senior management, because eventually it usually has to cost some money, or they have to change some of these rules. And what you'll get is you get kind of a vapor lock where things just can't move, where you have some
your communication channels are blocked. And it makes sense, but because it gets right down to it, Karl, that it's a human element. It always gets down. I think if you can create people, it's always people.
Yeah. That's why we have our thing of in our company, what we're trying to help clients understand is it's people, then it's your process, then you can go to your assets and then your product. But you have to start with your people. And so with like the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, there's great gains to be had from that, because the Internet of Things is going to give you information and insights that you never had before, that you have sensors that are sending data at such a rate that now you can see minute by minute what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. So now we're able to then look at things like, hey, when this particular shift, right, if you're running a 24-hour process, right, so you have 4 shifts, A, B, C, and D shift, and you can then get data to show, D shift really, they make this particular product, they do a better job at modifying the controls in the process to get us a better throughput, whether that's higher quality or greater quantity. Then the next shift comes in and they change it, and you have something where what they're doing causes damage to certain equipment. And they don't know that. They're not doing it because they have malice towards the equipment. They just have been taught this way, or they believe based on past experience, this is what they should do. But they don't have any evidence, right? It's opinions. And so what we've seen is the ability to increase throughput. We've been able to increase and improve first-time fix rates for maintenance people. So one of the things we expanded on is I started in condition monitoring, but I found out very quickly that if your skills of your maintenance people are not at a high enough level, you can actually suffer from repeated failures, right? So now your risk, you have the same failures over and over. And so what will happen is someone will get upset and they'll throw out the maintenance group and they'll bring in a new maintenance group. What we find often, though, is that's just them peeling off this label, right? And they put another label on there. And they go, okay.
I know. I am aware of it. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
let me ask you.
I always found that fascinating that they're unhappy with maintenance and they change whose payroll they're on, but they keep the same people. Yeah. So we created something to do a skills gap assessment. It's based on national standards. Our director of that program is a proctor that's been certified by NCCR. And so we have it in mechanics, millwright work, electrical, instrumentation, pipe fitting. And because those 4 skills or 4 crafts we find can devastate your reliability, which makes your risk higher and your ability to do your job of whatever it is that you're manufacturing or producing is more difficult.
Okay, so we're going to have to enter into the next level, but I want to summarize a couple of things that you brought out in managing risk.
Sure.
It's the people, right?
Correct.
The environment and profit after that when we start managing risk. One of the things I did not get down was you said there's 5 people. What were the 5 points that you brought up real quick about when we started talking?
So I talked about 2 things. So I talked about people, process, assets, and product. Okay, but that was 4.
Oh, what's 5. The last one? What's 4?
Product.
There you go.
So your assets are there to produce something for you. And if you want high production of your product, you need to have your assets operating in a manner that's reliable, that doesn't cause excessive damage. So we've seen things where reliability, people then throw with maintenance. Well, maintenance is the last department to get a hold of the equipment. You could affect reliability by poor design, and that's proven on a weekly basis.
Absolutely.
Where we get called out, right? You can have poor procurement where project management said, we need to save some money. So they talk to the manufacturer, the OEM, and they go, great, yeah, we'll change this. I had one client that they have to dry their natural gas, and they had a lot of cost in the glycol used in the process to dry it. So they said, can you get us a cheaper price? And the chemical company said, sure. And they removed boron from the glycol. Now, unless you know chemistry in the process, you go, okay, well, is that significant? Very significant. Boron is a corrosion inhibitor. So they traded a short-term gain by having cheaper glycol with creating a situation that allowed corrosion to affect their entire glycol drying system, right? So they took a short-term gain at the risk of destroying their entire glycol processing equipment and causing themselves to have a release. Okay. So that sort of thing. All right. Okay, but when it comes to managing risk, you want to manage risk for people. You want to manage risk for your environment. You want to manage risk for profit. Yeah. Okay. So those are the main three areas there that you want to manage risk on.
Right. Anyway, of course, we're broadcasting live, and of course, people are coming in the house and all that good stuff. So it's all fantastic.
Listen, I have been sitting here with some concern, waiting for my children to come down.
Yeah, and it just dogs barking. Then it is what it is.
Yeah.
So real quick, what's interesting from these lists? From what's interesting is it gets down to people, because your first list was people, environment, profit, right? Managing risk. People, process, asset, product. People again, and then you talked about the necessity for a proper skill gap assessment, which is all people based.
Correct. Yeah.
That's it. Correct. Okay, let's go on to the next one right now. How does it save you money? How does this save you money? And I understand the necessity that there's time, there's 1 to 3, there's the push with the ROI, and it's me wanting to do, get as best as I can, things like that.
Right.
How does it save you money?
So there's various ways it does. First and foremost is if you have a reliable managed system for maintenance, if you're planning your work, you're able to procure the parts and at a lower cost, right? Instead of having hotshot charges and things like that. The second thing is when you're using condition monitoring, you should be proactively managing your assets so that you're having small repairs of components versus major overhauls of the entire train.
Yes.
The other thing is a planned repair, then you're involving operations. So you plan the repair to occur at the least possible cost to your production. Now, oftentimes production will say, well, we need to be running at 110% because we have orders. Great. You're going to actually have some planned maintenance. You have to. So we had a client, frac sand. They're manufacturing sand for the fracking industry for energy production.
Right.
They had a plan put in one plant where every Friday they did maintenance. That person who was strong enough, and the thing about people is that you'll see a plant that has world-class reliability, world-class maintenance, world-class, highest production, and that person gets promoted or moves off to another location. And because their strength and their fortitude is now missing from that site, other forces come in and push to something else where they go, well, why are we giving up a whole day for maintenance? Let's just keep running and we'll give you guys a half day. And what happens is they're not able to proactively maintain the equipment like they used to.
Yeah.
And suddenly they have some major failures and now their production's down. And we had that with a client. They're like, we don't understand. We're trying to do this many thousands of tons per day and we can't do it. And when you were here, we did it. And he goes, well, we used to have every Friday off. Oh, no. We can't take Friday off because we need production. And so they put themselves into a bind because they're like, we have to go fast. And I've been learning that myself on some projects we've been working on internally. Is I'm guilty myself of wrecking our own process because I want to go fast. And so it's been a great lesson both internally to actually walk your own talk. It's easy to say you have to have a controlled process that moves you from here to here, but not live it yourself inside your company. And we've been doing better and better and better with that over the last few months of learning how our own process sabotages our growth and sabotages the consistency of our product, that we can then say with conviction to our clients, listen, you have to plan your maintenance. You're going to have some downtime. But if your equipment is clean, tight, lubricated, running well, you can run it at a little bit higher production Sunday or Saturday through Thursday to give you that Friday to loosen up, getting everything back the way it should be, tighten it back up, lubricate it, get it repaired, get the things changed out, and then run it hard and heavy Saturday morning all the way through Thursday. And you'll get more production on a 6-day-a-week program than you did when you're trying to work at 6.5 or 7 days.
Again, it gets down to, Karl, it gets down to education. It gets down to learning. It gets down to truly getting into the data, the information that is available within your assets. And to be
I'm going to interrupt you a bit.
Yeah.
It's not just the education, because you can talk that all you want. It's actually having the strength of character to get your program implemented. That's the thing, man. We can all sit in a room and go, yes, yes, yes. But then you're out on the shop floor and you're like, all right, we're shutting it down. And production goes, oh, no. That was just in the meeting. I'm not letting you shut this down.
Interesting. That, once again,
so,
strength of character, human quality. Again.
Yeah. I mean, that's where, fortitude is a thing that you have. It's a difficult thing to say, no, you're shutting this down. We're taking this down. And that's why I applaud that gentleman I was talking to yesterday on the phone for him to shut down an entire plant. That most people would feel that's a career-ending move.
Yeah,
right?
Good point. Yeah,
that's a lot of fortitude.
Absolute good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
again, I just keep on harping on the fact that, one, there's got to be the education, and then I like this one, strength of character, human fortitude. You got to have pretty good skin and
it's not easy being the person saying, no, we're stopping. Right? It's not easy at all. It's a very difficult thing, and you have a lot of passionate people who have risen to a level of management for getting results, and oftentimes the results is produced product. I have more pounds or more gallons or more, whatever it is, bales, and they're at this higher level of management because they've been able to get there. And they want to move to the next level. And that's where we come in. There's many surveys that show that 90% of reliability initiatives fail within 1 to 2 years.
Oh, easily. Oh, absolutely.
Right. I mean, and that's not my opinion. That's multiple surveys I've been seeing over the past decade where it doesn't matter the industry, pulp and paper, food and beverage, oil and gas, petrochemicals, right? Across the board, doesn't matter. They continue to fail. Why? So, again, not to be an infomercial, but we feel that we have an approach that's unique, and we've got the past case histories to show when these things were allowed to occur, when senior management said, we're going to let these guys run with it. I know you're not going to like it in the short term, but you're going to like it later on. And we give them the case studies to show this improvement. We've been able to get this stuff in, but it first starts with the people, starting communication plan so that you have those two areas that you can get people in agreement. The thing about moving any initiative forward is getting people into agreement. If you still have people that are cross purposes, you don't move forward, you move against each other. And the more friction you have, the more siloed you have between different groups. I used to make a joke about, as a condition monitoring person, I've got assets I'm trying to take care of and do diagnostic tests on. They can't tell me what's going on. It's up to me to observe, to visualize, and do some tests. So I liken it to having a pediatric patient. I have a child who can't really articulate what's going on. I'm trying to listen to the parents. They're divorced and they're not getting along, right? So some places you go to, you have some friction between operations and maintenance. Like you have an overprotective single mom and you have a deadbeat dad and they're not getting along. And how do you navigate that to try to get some results? And you're saying, well, this is what you need to do with your patient. And you have the overprotective mom saying, yes, we're going to do that. And you have the deadbeat dad going, nah, we're moving forward. So that's your first little micro experience of this friction, let alone when you go plant wide and you're trying to get some changes and you're telling people, no, you have to shut down.
Other plants that are all over, disconnected or wherever, they're all around the world if you're working with companies that are global.
Yeah. How many turnarounds are you in where they're like, we need to do this? And they go, we don't have the budget. We don't have the time. Shut it down. And everybody just shrugs and morale crashes because they know you can't run at 112%. If the equipment was designed to run at 80%, right, and it's been abused and used for the last 3 years, so its capacity to produce its product is really at 78%. So what do you have? They run at 112 and it breaks and it breaks and it breaks.
Right.
And so that's where the education is difficult because a lot of these people, both in operations and production, are so heroic that senior management has no idea the great lengths that people on the front line are doing just to get the show on the road and keep it on the road. And that's where you get bubble gum, baling wire, and duct tape.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, so we're going to venture into the next one. We know that it manages risk. We know that it saves money. Let's talk a little bit of how it makes money. And I think it's obvious. If you're able to apply what you were just talking about, and do it effectively, and getting people, rowing the boat in the same direction, got a communication plan,
right,
and they're educated, and everybody's buying in, you can't help but make money. You can't help but have a return on that investment. Can't.
Yeah.
You just have to be patient.
Yeah. Well, one of the viewpoints, though, is people are basically good. They're trying to do a good job. They may not execute as well as you'd like. And it's taken me years of that. But one of the things that I had communicated to me at a training session like 4 years ago was people are trying to do a good job. So when they don't get the result that you want to look at, well, how did we come about it? I mean, you can walk in there and use the data as a club and beat people down for it. But does that really advance your program? Does it really create a stronger team? Yeah. Oftentimes it doesn't. So, it's not somebody doesn't need to get their rear end chewed out. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you have someone who's actively working against the group and you need to move them away from that particular part of the group. But when it comes to making money, people are trying, they want a job. We had another client who they just couldn't get the various groups to work together. And they ended up getting sold, and they got sold to a foreign company. And that foreign company basically just used them to teach them the process, show them how they could get better quality. And as soon as they could figure out how to do it on their own, they shut the American plant down and they opened up they had a plant going in China. So how does it make money is that if you're able to produce more product for less cost, that's less overtime, that's less safety incidents, right? So planned work is cheaper work. Planned work is safer work. Planned work only occurs when there's a culture that allows for there to be a standard process to move through the various iterations of shutting the machine down, getting in there, tearing it down, repairing it, and putting it back together and getting the show back on the road, right? You can run on bald tires, right? We all know that. Everybody who's, in outside of high school and stuff, you might have shirked on your maintenance a little bit, run around on
bald tires.
Yeah, you can run on bald tires. And that's the fallacy that many people in management go, well, we're still producing product. I don't know why you need to shut down. Well, the thing is, if you blow a tire when you're backing out of your garage or backing out of your driveway, the consequences of that are minimal. You blow a tire on a bridge across the ship channel here in Houston at 7:45 in the morning, you've just created an incident that affected 10, 20,000 people, right? Mm-hmm. So the cost of that blowout, same tire failure, but the ramifications and the overall costs are huge. And so what you have is some people who have just, through dumb luck, have been able to escape by having the blowout being of minimal consequence. But as we've seen with these 5 incidents in 2019, where there were major consequences, the terminal ITC, over several $1 billion in consequences with shutting down the entire ship channel. That affected global energy and chemical production. Right? Global. Right?
Yeah, I would say that's not a good day. That's definitely not
a good day. Not a good week, right?
Not a good year. So, in fact,
and we slid right into 2020 and we had our stuff there. So again, these are the things that you're trying to run a business. You're trying to produce your product, and there are external forces that can devastate you, like Russia and Saudi Arabia getting in a spat over oil prices and crashing oil prices. That affected American energy production across the board, not just your oil and gas that's gathering. That's your midstream, downstream. Sure, they're going to benefit some because of a lower commodity price. But in between there, from midstream and upstream, you've got companies that are devastated all over the place.
Yeah, so, it's definitely. And what's interesting about this COVID whole deal, not just from an energy perspective or a chemical perspective or manufacturing, you realized how global we are and how dependent we are from a global perspective. And it's interesting. I've had a number of conversations about supply chain, and I can't get this. Nobody really understood until they went to their local store and they couldn't find toilet paper. And then they realized, well, I can't have toilet paper. And then it's like, well, because of X, Y, Z. And then they just realized it's just an interesting time. I'm telling you, man, it's painful in some sense, right? It automatically, it's painful. But in the other sense, it has really honed our focus on things that really matter, that are real important. Like, am I really managing risk? Am I really saving my money and spending my money appropriately to be able to achieve that? And then am I doing it in such a way that I am truly optimizing my ability to make money? And then that goes into the next one, is that we've got to develop strategies today, in fact, yesterday, that we are ensuring some level of resiliency, a better level of resiliency going forward in our business. And what you're talking about, Karl, in light of all of the stuff that you're talking about, does it create business resiliency long term?
So the better your teams work together, the better you're able to communicate up and down from frontline workers to middle management, site management, and then corporate management, the better you are at turning from this pre-COVID to after COVID, or pre-Russia, Saudi Arabia oil prices to after, right? So again, it goes back to people in your process, okay? So if you can, it's easy to send out a directive from the CEO saying, we are now going to do this. But then you see, how does that get implemented down the line, right? I mean, we've got some clients where we are their condition monitoring and reliability optimization consultant for multiple sites. And just with COVID, I can tell you, no site implemented the same document the same way.
No way.
Yep. We had some that said, sorry, you can't come on because of COVID and our policy. And then we said, well, we just, your sister plant right over there, we just finished 25 hours in the last 2 days. That's where we're coming to you next. And so there were interpretations that needed to be clarified. There, it's like write a policy how to wash your car. You're going to get one guy that gives you a 15-page detailed policy. You get another guy who just says, go to the car wash, spend $20. Right.
Both
of them get a car washed, right? And you have people in between. So when you issue a policy, you want to have that experience that you've issued policies, people understand and communicate really well between themselves so you can get consistency. And so when you talk about long-term business resiliency, I would say you have a perfect case study in your own company right now by looking at how well did they implement your COVID policies. And you'll be shocked if you take a brutal evaluation to look at what did you really do? And how was it really executed? And did you have consistency, or were there discrepancies? The more the discrepancies, the more that's an indicator that your communication with your teams is not as smooth and good as you think. And here we're talking about something that is nobody wants to have COVID, brought into their plant. Nobody wants to have their people exposed to COVID, right? For a certain percentage of the population, you're going to have a significant outcome of that where people are dying, right? That's why it's important to respect what's going on with COVID.
Yeah.
Coincident with that, though, is who are the majority of people in industrial space? Are they below 30 years old? Are they above 40 years old? Where are they? Because we know that the risk factors for COVID are 50 years old plus, 50 plus, right? Comorbidities, which is a fancy medical term for saying you have another disease, diabetes and high blood pressure. Now, what I would take the next step is they don't say it, and I don't know why, but when it comes to diabetes and high blood pressure, more people who have those two conditions, not everyone, but the majority of people who have diabetes and high blood pressure also are overweight. Some of them are grossly overweight, what we'd say obese, right? If you're obese, your aerobic capacity, your ability of your lungs to function well is reduced. COVID dramatically impacts your lungs. So if you're at lowered lung capacity already from a sedentary lifestyle and having too much sugar and fats and stuff like that, and so you're overweight, you have high blood pressure, and you have diabetes, and you have poor function of your lungs, and then you get COVID, that's how you can have a death so rapidly. And where do we have that with our maintenance people? The average age of a maintenance person in most plants is 50 plus, right? Oof. So that's the danger that you have when you talk about managing risk or long-term business resiliency. Have you been capturing the tribal knowledge of your workers? right? They don't. So, we have a solution for that too. And again, not to be an infomercial, I want to just talk, in big strokes here, but if you're not sitting down with your people who are about to retire and figuring out what they do that's well, are there secret PMs, preventative maintenance procedures? That one plant that went to, that got sold over to China, there was a gentleman that had been there for 20 plus years. There were a few secret PMs that he did to keep the plant running, which was shocking. But
wow.
Secret, yeah. It was something he just did because he knew if he didn't do it, the plant wouldn't run right.
Right.
And he said we should have a PM for that. Well, the thing was why it wasn't an official PM is that it went against their safety protocols.
No.
But they didn't have the funds to fix the asset. It was a blower that kept a negative pressure on their chlorine service. And they had one blower that ran all the time, and then they had their backup blower. Well, the backup blower never worked. That's why they didn't swap it. And the reason why it didn't work is because the charcoal beds were not designed. The structure that held the charcoal in place was not designed right, and it kept breaking, and charcoal would then fall out of the filters and clog the actual blower. So this guy every week would put a garden hose into that blower and drain out all the charcoal to clear it up. And then he would add more charcoal at the top. And it was basically just filtering charcoal through and wasting it, right? So that main blower went down, and they said, and we kept saying, I'm like, this is going to blow up. This is vibration showing this thing's going crazy. And I finally had to shoot a video showing that this thing was having 3/4 to 1 full inch of travel.
Yeah.
Because the bearings were so shot. And I said, if you don't shut this down, what happens? And the guy goes, the system will go positive and we'll have a chlorine release. I said, so this is an environmental. He goes, well, that's why it's called an EVP. It's an environmental vent blower. I'm like, okay, or whatever it was. But so they wanted to get the other blower running and they couldn't. So they called this guy because he had been terminated for another reason. And they said, hey, how do we get this thing online? He goes, well, you got to do the secret PM. You got to run a garden hose through here. And I put a little nozzle there. And he ran it through and they cleared out the charcoal. And then the blower would run. Right. And it was never brought to light because other people had stopped the communication of what he was trying to do because they didn't have the money to fix this thing. And they couldn't say that they didn't have the money to fix this thing because environmental stuff was always supposed to take precedent over profits, which it's supposed to. So, we luckily avoided that. But if that primary blower had failed, which it was on the edge of doing it, that was part of our value was we were there to yell and scream. And one of my famous quotes from there was, well, you didn't tell us it was going to blow up. And I'd say, well, I can't make red any redder. We've been giving you a red alarm for 6 months. Right. So we actually took the color purple and we now use the color purple. When we send a purple notification, we're saying that you absolutely have to get this thing shut down and overhauled or repaired because it's going to impact people, environment, process, profits.
Makes sense. Hey, Karl, we're going to wrap this up, man. We've been at it for about 53 minutes. You're the man. And see, this is interesting. See, I can get into this stuff, and this is why the Industrial Talk podcast celebrates people like you and others that are in industry. We, me, and others, we just naturally go through our lives. We just sort of, we're somewhat, steeped in our ignorance because we don't know what happens at these facilities and what it takes, the level of professionalism that exists within industry, within manufacturing to keep things moving, to keep things rolling, to keep things just helping us live better lives. And
I'd like to say, I agree. And one thing I'd like to say is that when I talk to maintenance and operations people, especially in the chemical oil refining, but people in manufacturing, people in industry all over the place, they are heroic. They are doing an amazing thing, and they don't get the kudos. If you look at how many people, we talk about celebrating first responders, police and EMS and doctors and things like that, which is great. I'm not opposed to that. They do a great job and it's valuable. But people have no idea how many disasters get avoided on a daily basis all around the world.
It would cripple you. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's pretty heroic. And I always applaud the operations and the maintenance people for what they do. There was a meeting I was supposed to have with a fire captain, and he blew me off and he said, I'm a frontline worker. I don't get to work 9 to 5 like you. And I just looked at him and went, I don't work 9 to 5.
Heck no, man.
We're working amazing things done in the industrial space. And so that's why I appreciate what you're doing with Industrial Talk to celebrate what we're doing and talking about how we're helping to manage risk, improve profits, and contribute to long-term business resiliency.
I'm telling you, man, your solutions and the people within your industry, just let's just take reliability in general. You're managing risk, you're reducing costs, you're saving money, you're making money because that asset's uptime, got some great uptime. And then, of course, there is a long-term benefit of resiliency. It's just the right thing to do. And it's, it's interesting. We're working with Hitachi Vantara on the Heroes of Manufacturing. And it's just in line with what you said.
A good program.
Yeah, it is just the line. It's just like, you're not to diminish, you're a doctor. Fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you for what you do. But these unsung heroes like you and others who just get in there to keep things sort of moving and making our lives better. You just don't see it. Those are beautiful people, beautiful passion. Yeah. Karl, you once again, you're out there on LinkedIn. You're passionate about what you do, and you are engaged on LinkedIn, right?
Yes. Yeah, very engaged on LinkedIn. So there's not too many Hoffowers.
How do you spell that name?
Hoffower.
Yeah, I've typed that in, and really, you're the only one.
Well, there's myself, and there's another Hoffower. She works for Business Insider, so she does a good job as well. Yeah, well, there's no Karl. No, I'm the only Karl. Yeah, Karl with a K. Yeah,
Karl with a K.
German by heritage, but my family's been here since the 1820s or something like that. So American through and through.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for giving us that little disclaimer. Because I was sitting there going to think, well, heck, man, he's not American.
Well, I'll have that. People look at my name and they'll see Karl with a K and Hoffower, Karl Hoffower, and they'll say Sprechen Sie Deutsch, and I'll just check one and say Nick Sprechen Sie Deutsch. That's right. And most people think it's funny, right? I just said I don't speak German in German. The one interesting thing is when I say that to people from Germany, they don't laugh.
Yeah. You gotta up your.
They don't find that funny. They go, right, you just said something in German. So, anyways, it's pretty funny.
All right, thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. Absolute honor to be able to have the doctor in the house talking about reliability, talking about what him and his team are doing to keep us safe, but more than that, making our lives a lot better. Thank you, Karl, for what you're doing, and thank you to your team, definitely, for what they do each and every day.
Well, thanks, Scott. I appreciate being on the podcast and being able to talk some things. If people want to see a taste of our people, process, asset improvement, I'm happy to give them a free download of one of our modules. So if you go to failureprevention.com and you look at system prescription, now I abbreviated it prescription. It's that RX. So if you look for system RXM, system prescription, you log on there and you can get a free download to look at our basic courses. We've got 4 modules that move you from being a victim to being proactive. So no matter where you are in the journey, even if you're doing it really well, if you want to go to the next stage, we're happy to talk to you.
Love it, my friend. That's free stuff. You can't complain about that. I love the
free's good.
Yeah. Free's good, baby. All right. Thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast, Saturday's live edition. We're going to continue to try to amp this up. We're trying to shame LinkedIn and giving me the opportunity to do live. So with that, I've got to do these things. So love it. Take care. Thank you very much. Be safe as always.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Karl